think I've ever had to do 4 takes of a video, so let's get into it. Hey friends, it's your good friend Tim Campbell-Smith, and today we are talking about why do people even go to therapy? What are the common reasons that people go to therapy for? Because we are going to normalize everybody experiencing therapy. This is so my marketing background, but like distilling this down to a few words, but I'd say that the core reasons why anybody goes to therapy are for challenge, change, and opportunity. For any challenges, for any changes happening in life, and for opportunities, which involves good things. More on that later. With that, I think it's also important to remember and to start out of the gate with like, what is the point of therapy? Therapy is there to equip you to be able to handle this moment and future moments. So, and with being able to handle this moment, this is why a lot of clinicians will look to your childhood and will look to our past, because that informs like your adaptive behaviors, what you're doing in these moments, how you're trying to handle these moments, and then you look to future planning and how you'll handle future moments. But there's way more nuance and there's lots more reasons behind that. Before we go too far, make sure you like and subscribe for all things mental health, business, photography, school, life. Now, the other important note that I do have to make is that while there are many universal reasons that bring us to therapy, the kind of therapy you receive, the kind of support you receive, will be dependent on the type of clinician you go to. If you go to a psychiatrist, you are going to a medically trained doctor who's going to work based off of the biomedical model. So they're focusing more on like your biology, your biochemistry, what's going on in your brain, and then they're going to look at medication, and then they're going to use therapy and therapeutic models. Most psychiatrists have a bit of therapeutic training, but not nearly as much as, social workers, psychotherapists, and psychologists. Speaking of which, we then get into psychologists. So these are folks often with PhDs or psychological doctorates that are able to diagnose psychological disorders and concerns, and then will use therapy to solve it, or to work through it, They're not really using medication the way that psychiatrists are. And then you have social workers and psychotherapists who will use traditional talk therapy. There may be some use of labels. I know in social work we tend to avoid the use of labels, but it's more so about like, how does that affect you? What's your understanding of how that affects you? And going from there. So let's get into all the different reasons why anybody may go to therapy. The first one, and I think this is common, but I've also used this even despite how introspective I am. You may go to therapy if you just say something ain't right. You don't know what's wrong, but something isn't right. I'm pretty introspective. I know myself pretty well and usually what's going on in my head and my heart, but I've definitely had days where I went to therapy and I was like, something is wrong. I don't know what, but there are a lot of things wrong in my life and I can't find the common thread. And your clinician is trained to handle even that level of ambiguity and to explore with you to find out what may be wrong. So if ever you just feel off, or something's off, it's not quite right, that might be a sign that it's time for therapy. Next, and I love this, I'm not going to spoil the plot about what your therapist is going to tell you, but if you want to change somebody else, that might be a sign that it's a good time for therapy. Our relationships to others, our understanding of others can be fickle and nuanced, and if you want to change someone else, go to therapy. And please note that if there is something about them that could change or the work is more fruitful if it's collaborative, you and the other person, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a family, maybe it's a partner, your therapist will say that and may involve them. But it will usually start and end with you or one person. Next, it's a good time for therapy if you want to change yourself or something about yourself, and especially if you know what you want to change, you know why you want to change it, but you have no idea how. This might include things like self-esteem, your sense of self, your understanding of yourself. This might include communication skills or other skills in your life. This might include skills or thoughts you have around your career. Career navigation can be a big one where therapy can really help. And kind of related to that, but its own category as well for why people go to therapy, is to change behaviors. If there are things that you do that you want to change. So a common one, I know people do this voluntarily. Sometimes folks are required to engage in therapy, not of their own choice, because of the way they express emotions. How do you express anger? How do you express sadness? Are there different ways? Are there better ways of expressing that? Therapy can really help. Behavior work also may apply to social, like your social life or social situations. It may also apply to impulses. If you have a lot of different like impulses that you act on, whether or not they disrupt your life, if you want to work on impulses, that's a great time for therapy. Oh, here's another one. Another reason to go to therapy. This is one of my favorite reasons to go talk to my therapist is when you don't want to go talk to friends or family. There is definitely a time and a place to talk to friends and family. They're a wonderful support network and wonderful parts of support network. And sometimes because they're so familiar with us or because they have a vested interest in a particular outcome in our lives, they're not always the best person to talk to. So if you don't want to talk to a friend or a family member, or you feel like you can't talk to a friend or a family member, therapy is fantastic. Especially because your therapist is an objective outsider. They don't have the vested interest that your friend or family member does. Where I see folks, and even myself, when we're not able to talk to friends or family, and this is another reason why we go to therapy, is if it has to do with your identity or your sense of self. Sometimes our identity changes don't feel safe to share with family or friends. Some folks have conservative or, certain family members that wouldn't be accepting if they were queer or if they were trans. And we need someone to be with us as we navigate that, but that can't be friends or family. So our identity and our sense of self, when that's changing, and again, we need an objective outsider or we can't go to friends or family, having a therapist is great for navigating changes to identity and sense of self. Next, and this is a really obvious one, which is why I didn't want to just start with this out of the gate, but it is a great time to go to therapy if you have mental health concerns, if you are concerned for your mental health and well-being. This is where I would say like a medical doctor and or a psychiatrist and or then a psychologist will be able to really support you, especially in the short term. And your mental health concerns can be with a diagnosis or a fear or a concern or the idea of a diagnosis, or just how those things are impacting you. So, for example, when I was 21, I had some very serious concerns about myself and how I was living my life. And especially because I had gone through a really awful breakup at that time, and I was like, I think I might have depression. So I went to my doctor. It wasn't just, though, about the concern of a diagnosis of depression. It was more like I'm not only sad all the time, there's this persistent hopelessness, and because of that, it's impacting my work. And so it wasn't just about the diagnosis, it was about other ways that it affected my life. And again, especially in that case, when it's a mental health concern and you're thinking of any diagnostic words, any diagnoses, I would say maybe consider going to a doctor first, family physician, a psychiatrist, or getting that referral, or a psychologist, and then, working with clinicians from there. But again, your treatment, your care plan, how you navigate the world is totally up to you. Here's another reason to go to therapy, and it's not always the most obvious, but this was fascinating, research I was reading and stuff I was reading, was around chronic illness. If you experience chronic illness, I definitely want to encourage you to think about therapy. Chronic illness affects like every single part of your life, and in so many different ways. This changes, I think one of the big ones is social interactions, how often you interact socially, what you do socially, when, where, how you do things socially, your friendships and then your relationships, which are key elements to the human experience, and to thrive. Chronic illness can dampen a lot of that. Also, though, there's huge bodies of research that folks with chronic illness are more likely to experience anxiety, depression, social isolation. Scientists and researchers and doctors have been able to see how isolation affects literally your biology and your DNA and harms your health that way. So it's not just a social health thing. It's not just a mental health thing. And there's also interesting and cool research, and I can't wait to learn about this as a social worker, is about how mental health support may help with pain management. It won't actually decrease your pain, but it may increase your ability to tolerate pain, which is a part of chronic illness. So, if you experience chronic illness, or if you're closely related to someone experiencing chronic illness, therapy may be a really smart choice. Next, another big reason why anybody would go to therapy is for big life changes. Actually, many life changes, because most life changes are big. So this could be everything from like getting a divorce, a partner dying, moving, going to a new school, changing careers, entering retirement, getting married, death, and dying. Anything that marks a major life change can be tough. And again, going back to like, why do people even go to therapy in the first place? It's to be able to handle the moment and future moments. Next, another reason why you may go to therapy, and we've kind of like danced around it in other places, but anything to do with relationships to parents, to spouses, to kids, your social connection to other people can be tough. Having another person who understands humans and human relationships and working with you to navigate, generally a very helpful thing. Another reason people may go to therapy is for addiction to substances or not to substances. So if you find yourself really using something in your life and using it maybe more often than you should, maybe more often than it's helpful, so it's actually becoming detrimental in any way, therapy might be helpful. So that could be anything from like, I'm going to say classic, and we tend to think of addiction in terms of substances, so alcohol, different drugs, but it may also be non-substances, so it may be gambling, it may be food, it may be your phone. Anything that you can't seem to get rid of in your life, especially if you find it helpful. So you find it helpful to drink, you find it helpful to gamble, you find it helpful to eat. More often than it's actually helpful, that might be a great time for therapy. And then my final category, and it's like, I'm going to call it one big whole category, why you may go to therapy, is actually for preventative care and skill building. Because therapists can also work with you on positive things in your life and increasing the amount of positive things in your life. So you may go to therapy for resilience training and to learn about resilience and build your own capacity for resilience. You may go for skill building. So learning to listen to your intuition or learning how to communicate with others. You may go to therapy to learn more about coping, habits, hobbies, about who you are as a human and what makes you the wonderful and beautiful creature that you are. Therapy can also help with that when you want more good in your world. When things are going well and you want more of it, you're not sure how to get more of it, a therapist would be a great partner on that journey. I hope you can see that there are so many different reasons why anyone might go to therapy. Remember, the point of therapy is to be able to handle this moment and future moments. So that's everything from, tough stuff to good stuff. Being able to have more good moments, being able to get through those tougher moments, whether it's maybe substances that you're using, or it's difficult relationships, or it's changes in life, and especially changes in life that you can't talk to your friends or family about. There are lots of different reasons to go to therapy, and it's totally up to you when you go, how you go, and what that relationship looks like. But I do hope you see that there's a lot of different reasons. Therapy is totally normal. It's a common thing that a lot of people do. It's helpful and it's great. Comment and let me know. What other reasons do you see why people may go to therapy? As always, make sure you like and subscribe for all things business, photography, mental health, school, and life. Otherwise, we'll chat soon. Bye for now.